Hi, I'm Andrew Wallace. Welcome to the We've Got a Problem podcast, where each week we explore inspiring stories of struggle, success, and solutions to prevalent problems and how our guests have turned a problem into an opportunity. Today, I'm joined by John Mendez, Connecticut realtor and host of the Walk to Wealth podcast, on which he focuses on empowering young adults to build wealthy and abundant lives. John, welcome to the show.
Andrew, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited to be here and I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, give us a little bit of background. How did you get your start? What got you into this?
I'll give you a little bit of context just as my upbringing. I won't go too into the weeds, but long story short, I grew up in the projects, nine of us in a two-bedroom. Dad was absent. Mom, me and her never had a great relationship. So my grandparents were the ones who raised me. I wasn't never an entrepreneur at all. This is not something I planned on. I didn't have the paper route. I didn't have the lemonade stand. That was not me growing up.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until about, I'd say, pandemic happened and I was in college. And for a little bit more context, I went to school to learn how to network and live on my own. And with the pandemic happening, those two reasons were swiped from under me in the blink of an eye almost. And so my reasons for going to college instantly were thrown out the window. Fast forward a little bit, because that was in March of 2020. I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in around November. And then from there, that planted a seed in me that to know that there's another way of viewing the world out there that wasn't being taught, not only in school, but not in my current environment, not in my friendships, not in
Right.
anywhere that I was experiencing or living and going. So I dove into the personal finance rabbit holes, started watching YouTube videos, podcasts, reading books, consuming tons of information. Came back that spring semester, and it's like I seen the light, and then I couldn't unsee it. So I decided, hey, I'm very hardworking. I'm a go-getter. We're in this kind of uncertain time. I'd rather just bet on myself, right? I'm the only person I could really count on, at least count on more than anyone else for the most part, at least at that
Yep.
time, right? Before I got into the space.
For
But
sure.
then I was like, hey, I'll bet on myself. I got a good group of people that love me and support me. And I was like, hey, I'm dropping out. I decided to pursue real estate. And long story short, that's kind of what's led to me being here today.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's, I think, a more common experience than people want to admit, where they kind of have this epiphany, so to speak, while they're in college. They start to think these things through. You said your book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What
Yeah.
was it about that just flipped the switch?
It was more so
Okay.
conceptually, it resonated with the way I was brought up and the views that the poor dad had and the outlook he had on the world of both, life and business and how we're supposed to act and how we are supposed to view certain opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
That resonated with me because that's kind of how everyone in my circle and in my environment kind of viewed the world up to that point. And it wasn't until reading Rich Dad Poor Dad that the beauty of that book is it's not the world's greatest book, but it gives you another perspective, which is the perspective of the rich dad. And seeing that intrigued me. I was always a very curious person, and I genuinely enjoy just the art, I guess you could call it, of learning. Just
Mm-hmm.
I love learning, and so for me, the only caveat is if it wasn't something that could be applied to my life, or there wasn't something that made me find it important to my life or a way that I could contribute, I didn't care about it at all.
Right.
So, reading that book, I was like, for the first time in a while, because leading up to that is just Shakespeare and things I didn't want to read.
Right.
Not to, not nothing against Shakespeare for anyone that may feel offended, but that's not my cup of tea. And once I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, okay, there's a rich dad way of viewing the world out there that I've never been taught and I've never really had any exposure to. I want to go look up, look and seek for more information around that.
Yeah. Well, summarize that for me. What is the difference between the rich dad and the poor dad way,
Yeah,
for
so
those
the
people who
poor
haven't read the
dad,
book?
yeah, so poor dad way of thinking, one of the main ways is I can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Rich dad way of thinking is how can I afford it? Things like that, right? It's the cards are stacked against me, the rich dad way of viewing the world, where it's like everything is working out in my favor,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just more so operating, to put it into like quantum a little bit, operating out of abundance and not scarcity, out
Well,
of, not out of lack.
yes, yes, yes. And that's, I think there's a big concept of mindset that everybody kind of tap dances around,
Yeah.
but it makes such a difference. And now we're seeing more and more it backed up by research that how you view things can actually affect how things occur in the future. How
Yeah.
how much you're able to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, how you're able to carry yourself through life, how you look at those things, right? That you look at something as an opportunity rather than a problem.
And then sorry.
No,
I was
go
gonna say
ahead.
the easiest way to kind of put it for anyone, regardless of how experienced or unexperienced you are in this realm of thought, it's imagine we're all mini radio stations, right? When you go in the car, and especially in the US, you either have FM or AM radio, right?
Sure.
And you could tune it and you can get a station. And depending on what station you're on, you're going to hear certain kinds of music. We're all similar to these radio stations. The only problem is that we don't know what station we're on, nor do we realize that we actually have the power to tune the station that we're on and
Right.
change it. So a lot of the times, like we attract a lot of these things and we don't know why. And we never realized that we could actually change the station to something that better suits our liking.
Yes. 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 Change the station. And you've got the power, right? That's the thing. I have the power to turn the knob. I can make a difference. I can do all this. So, I mean, you've got your Walk to Wealth podcast. You've been doing this a little bit of time here. What would you say the biggest kind of hang up is for people? What's keeping people from moving toward living in wealth and abundance? Is it just mindset, or is it something more? What's holding people back?
I think the simplest way to put it is you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of these things, at least from my personal experience, I've never heard about a large chunk of what I know now. I've never heard about it in any regular casual conversation leading up to before I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. For example, like real estate investing, tax deduction strategies. Like I know random tax deduction facts, like in that I can't even apply in my life right now. Like for example, like if you have a car over 6,000 pounds, you can write it off the whole thing in the first year. I know random like tidbits and facts like that about things, or even more complex investing strategies that I'm in no position to invest in right now, such as real estate syndications. A lot of these you have to have at least, if you're going the accredited route, $50,000 minimum down payment just to get into a lot of these investment vehicles. And it's like, if you're not, for lack of a better way to put it, at the golf club and having that conversation, you probably will never hear about any of this stuff. So like for me, it's like, how could we experience the world to its fullest when we don't even know any of the world really beside that small inner circle? For me, growing up in inner city, and it's like I didn't have any access or exposure to any of this stuff now. And it's like, if only I just heard about it. Like for me, my first guest that I interviewed on my show talked about real estate syndications. And most people my age don't have 50,000 to drop for a syndication investment. I don't myself, but it's like, if only someone had told me that was even a thing, I could have something to aim towards. Right.
Yes.
So it's like, it's you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of it is just awareness, bringing awareness to certain things.
Yeah, I think, and opening up the world a little bit. That's kind of the concept that people struggle with, and we all get into it. I mean, just ignore trying to build wealth and do all those things. Just in our lives in general, there are so many times that we believe things to be that way, and that's the only way that they can be, and that's how they are. And it's until you start moving beyond the little group of people who all say, think, do whatever the same way you do, that you just go, damn, there's a whole big great world out there, and I didn't even think, mind blown, right? Now I'm starting to think about these things that never would have been topics of conversation, like you say, at the dinner table. That might be at the country club if you or I were at the country club, but maybe not, and maybe only at arcane accountant seminars in Las Vegas, where they're talking about how to take advantage of the next piece of tax code. Who knows? But there are people out there. And I think that's another big lesson to take is, you may not know how to do something. You may not know the strategy, but once you know that something like that exists, you know that there's an expert out there who does know exactly how to take advantage of it and how it matters and how you can or cannot benefit from it. And there might be people that you want to add to your team. I mean, that's the whole Napoleon Hill thing of think and grow rich, right? Bring your mastermind group together. Get those people advising you, because you can't possibly be expert in all that thing. That knowing that you can deduct the full value of a 6,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating car. I mean, yes, of course, that gets you into other other pitfalls, right? Like, well, now it's heavy duty. And in the state of California, the registration on that is based on now weight instead of just the cost of the car and blah, blah, blah. And now you get into big things. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But that strategy exists. Yes, yes, yes. So now let's talk a little bit about building wealth, because that's one of the topics on your podcast, trying to get young adults to really start even just thinking about it, right? That it's possible, right? Bring that in. But what would you say is the quote unquote, and this is a big loaded question, best way to build wealth?
From everyone I've interviewed and, just my own walk so far is to bet on yourself. That is I think the only way, honestly, because this conveyor belt of life that we're on is created for us to grow up in the school system, get a 9 to 5, retire at 60, kick the bucket. That is the conveyor belt of life. Unfortunately, that us in a lot of these first world countries are, destined to live on, and majority of us will never, ever hop off.
Right.
And majority of us don't, because we never bet on ourselves. We don't believe that we can do it. We don't believe that there's a way out there that we could find. We don't believe that everything that all the power to manifest and create what we desire into this world is actually stored within us. And not to get into anything like too woo woo or any here he goes talking about a manifestation, stuff like that. But it's like, it's actually a reality. And you talk to enough people that are successful, and they'll all tell you that it starts within yourself. And it's striving to become the best possible person. And I have a very extreme way of viewing it, I guess I could say. But like, if you're not the person, if you don't become the person that you could potentially become, if you don't become the best version of yourself, and there's something called like the rules of connection, or the levels of connection, right? If you know 100 people, they know 100 people, and so on and so forth, you're only about 5 connections away from a billion people, which is pretty much the entire population. Right. So if you don't strive to become the best possible person that you can potentially become, then you are literally letting the world down. The world is going to be a worse place because you failed to do what you needed to do and become the person that you needed to become. And because you didn't bet on yourself, then literally everyone else, all the people that you could have potentially impacted, although it may not be, directly, it could be indirectly, but that's just as valuable, because you don't know whose fire you might spark and what they could do with that flame.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Absolutely. And that betting on yourself is something that I don't know if we're really conditioned to do. We're kind of told by society that we're not good enough. We're not the only ones. We can't do it by ourselves. We need all these other people. And yes, you're helping people out. There's no greater feeling than making a difference in somebody else's life while improving your own.
Yeah.
But so often we're just told that we're not enough. That's not good enough.
Yeah, and so I agree with you. I believe we're not conditioned to do so, but I believe we're wired to do so.
Correct.
And it's hard, because then you get to a point where it's like, conditioning and wiring, isn't it the same, one and the same? And it's like, no, because conditioning is external, whereas wiring is internal. And if you try to tell a kid no, what do? They do it anyways.
Do it.
They're gonna do it. They're gonna do it anyways, right? Yeah. So it's like, we let the child in us get covered by the conditioning.
Yeah.
And then that is what tends to pretty much hold us back. And a lot of the times when people not only become successful, but like become fulfilled, start living a life of abundance and having success, not just in the monetary plane, but in their relationship and all the other areas, it's because they uncovered that inner kid, because we're wired to go against the grain. We're not wired to do, be told what to do. It's in us all. We know a lot of us struggle with, authority, some obviously more than others, of course.
Sure.
But then it's like through the conditioning, whether it's schooling, whether it's parenting, whether it's, sports, and you may have had a coach, whoever it is, it's all conditioning. Some may be better or worse. There's no real good or bad, right? But a lot of this conditioning doesn't serve us. Right. And that kind of slowly but surely turns us more and more into sheep.
Right. Yes. Well, and that's like I say, we're conditioned by society to tell us that, maybe don't bet on yourself, take the safe choice. right?
Yeah.
Just go with the thing. But that's not our, like you say, not how we're wired. We want to go do it. We want to just pick up the pieces and start building something, right? I mean, think of a kid with Legos. It's like, I don't just screw the plan. I want to start building something with Legos, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't know that Legos had like a diagram for what you were supposed to build until way later. Like, I just thought that you just built whatever you wanted to. Because I always threw that, it's just a piece of paper I didn't understand. Like, you know, throw that stuff away, right? Part of the question is, how do we just start to get out of our own way and accept that that's what we want to do, right? Okay, we bet on ourselves. What would you tell some young person kind of getting started, or even to your younger self, that you now know for how to bet on yourself, how to start that process?
Yeah, I would say redefine everything. You mentioned a key word, safety.
Mm-hmm.
What is safety? Why do you seek safety? What is security? Define those things. Because if security looks like getting a degree, talk to all the people that were just at Twitter and all the people at Meta that just lost their jobs. And I'm kind of in the real estate space, so I know this, but like talk to all the people at Zillow that they shut down a quarter of their entire company because the iBuying thing didn't work out.
Right.
Talk to all those people. AIs now is a big thing. Talk to all the people that are about to lose their job. So pretty safe, right? Pretty
Right.
safe. So you have to ask yourself, what does any of this mean? And it's something that you may not have an answer for everything, right? And it's not like, it's more so it's the process and the I guess the thinking of these things that gets you in the right direction. It's not actually finding the answer, because a lot of these questions don't really have any answers, nor is it our place to even understand what the answers to some of these questions that we ask are.
But you got to do the thinking. You have to do that. You have to think of what it means to you, right? Like, John, what does abundance mean to you?
Yeah. And so for me, abundance, if you look at nature, right? There's not a lack of anything. There's enough berries. There's enough, leaves to go snack on. The deers are plentiful, right? The wolves that eat the deers are plentiful. There's no everything. There's nothing out of order. See, but it's hard because then it's more complicated, because us as humans, we have a natural, intrinsic tendency to just skew towards chaos. And so even if we had, that abundant thing, it's a never ending battle. But abundance is something where you just don't lack, right? There's no lack. And not because you have everything in the world, but because your needs are met and the needs of those around you are met. Because that's a problem with, the poor way of thinking. You only think, I need to make maybe 50,000 a year so I can have enough for me and my family. Well, what if your friend that you grew up with needs heart surgery and they can't afford it? You can't provide for your loved ones. You can't provide for them if you're only thinking about yourself. So abundance to me is being able to take care of not only myself, but my loved one, my family, my close circle, my circle around me. Being able to have enough to pour into others is how I would define abundance.
Yeah. Well, and that you've done that thinking, that you know the answer to that question, puts you head and shoulders above a lot of people. Because the fact is, most people don't think about what they value. And I've talked about this on every episode, but thinking through what you want, what matters to you, what is enough, and when will it be enough, will avoid so much unhappiness going forward, right? Because the most people don't, we're in a way wired, conditioned, all those things to kind of live in this scarcity mentality. Like, I've got to keep getting it. I've got to keep going. Ask any of these people who are super high performers, because they haven't done that thinking either. They're they're still trying to grab that thing. And you go, Mr. Musk, when is it? You're kind of performing like an evil genius here. When is enough going to be enough? How are you going to be satisfied? And the answer is he's not. He's got to keep going. But for a lot of us, there's declining value in some of these pursuits. You go, I have enough. Already I have enough in certain aspects, right? I can go to the grocery store now and pretty much put down my credit card and grab what I want to get. When you've done the thinking of what enough means to you, and it can redefine and it can shift throughout your life. But when you've thought through these things, it's a way to kind of be satisfied and happy with where you get to. Because otherwise, you reach that peak and then you're like, well, there's another one up there and I've got to get there. And you go, no, I've already done it. I've accomplished something. Now I can still continue to strive. Yeah, you know what? I'd like to try for that peak. I think I can get there. That's fine. But if you're never satisfied with where you get to, you'll never be. You need to celebrate the moments when you get to where you said you were going to get to. It's like, I just achieved something. I've done something cool. Whatever. I rented an apartment to somebody. I got my first client. I did this. I posted a podcast episode. My goal was to do this and I did it, and that's awesome. And now, yes, on to the next thing, but I am happy with where I am, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And so many people are not. So let's think through a little bit in the real estate market, because I want to talk a little bit about that. You've got some insights into that. How have things changed, right? We already talked about how a little bit people making safe choices and thinking through that, right? Go ask the people at Twitter and Meta and all that. But how has the real estate market changed since you've been in it?
Yeah, so this is something I was definitely a lot more knowledgeable on last year, as that's prior to I shifted my main focus to being on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I still keep up with it just from being in the space. And one thing that I've noticed, so from the time I got licensed September of 2021 is when I got licensed. And that's when we were still in the super hot fire, everything that I touch sells type of stick a sign in the yard a day later sold type of thing. And that was going on for probably about maybe like the first maybe like 6 to 7, 8 months that I was in the business. And like for me, one thing I noticed is that around, I guess, mid last year is when, I think it's May, when that first interest rate hike came in about, that's when things started shifting. And inventory started to pick back up a little bit, and things started to slow down a little bit. Things weren't selling, but we're still in a national shortage of homes since the recession. We stopped building homes, and for that short period, there's like a 5-year window where new construction pretty much came to a complete halt, and we never kind of got back on track to meet the demand since. That mixed with the baby boom back in the 80s and the prime buyer age, like all the people that were born in the 80s, we have a lot more people that are able to buy and of buying age right now than they are houses to sell. And then couple that with a couple other factors. So we're still in this spot where it's like there's still not a lot of homes to go around. But prices are kind of normaling out. But like then there's some areas in the country where prices have actually dropped. So it really is something that's hard to speak on a national level. And unless you're an economist or you're someone that keeps up very well with the national thing, especially since now my focus is more so just locally to make sure I'm in the loop of what's going around. But in here, in my, lower Fairfield County in Connecticut, where I'm at, we're sitting like close to roughly around like 2 months of inventory, give or take, which is, still a seller's market, still very favors sellers. For the most part, buyers do have a lot more wiggle room. People are starting to get, closing concessions and things like that, and their closing costs paid out. A lot more wiggle room. It's, homes are sitting on the market a lot longer than they once were. So that's kind of what I've been noticing. It's more so what I've noticed locally because I stopped looking at the national market. But from, here in my area, that's kind of been the trend.
Well, where do you see the opportunities? I mean, is there any big thing coming online that you're looking at going, oh, this looks ready for somebody either to buy or sell, that's going to make a difference? Anything coming up?
I'd say there's something that one of the best things I learned in real estate, there's like 12 Ds, and I forget all of them now, but it's divorce, death, displacement, disease, damn, I forget the rest. There's more, but there's always going to be reasons why people buy or sell.
Right.
Now, if you're not having something that's forcing you to move, it may not be the time to buy. Screw with all the other, all the rest of the agents that are like, oh no, it's always a great time to buy great real estate. That is if the numbers make sense. Right. So you have to ask yourself, and it's kind of similar to surprisingly, coincidentally, on topic of what we were talking about today about, like purpose and things like that. It's like, why? Why are you moving? Why are you selling? Why are you buying? What is the reason? Okay, here's you got your answer why. Now, does the number make sense? If you're on the buying side, if you can comfortably afford a mortgage payment of $2,500 a month, right? Then you can go out and see at $2,500 a month, what can this house afford? What can this monthly payment afford me? Search through, go to a couple open houses. You don't have to commit right then and there, right? Go to a couple of open houses. Is this the style of home that you would like to move to? Is this would make it worthwhile?
Right.
Ask yourself, how long do you plan on staying yourself in that home? Because in the short term, things might all crash and, everything might, hit the fan. But
Mm-hmm.
then just look at the prices of the last recession right before it crashed and look at the prices now. Right before, our prices now are higher than they were
Yep.
prior to the crash. So it's like, what's your time horizon? And that goes for real estate investing or even stock investing or just investing in general. What is your time horizon?
Yeah, man. And people don't, I mean, I hate to generalize here, but
Yeah.
rarely do people think through what their time horizon is and that it's going to matter because for anything, even a purchase
Yeah.
of an appliance or something, you go, okay, great. You want to buy that new thing, but why? And I don't, don't beat yourself up over it, but ask yourself the question, why am I buying this? How long am I going to need it? Am I going to get the benefit of it? Right? They try to convince people to put solar panels on their houses out here all the time, right? That's
Yeah.
the big thing out in California. Put solar panels on your house. Okay, great. But the cost of those solar panels, let's say, and I'm just using this to make the math easy, cost of those panels is $10,000, let's say.
Mm.
You amortize that over your years of electric bills, and now you're going, I have to live in this house and get the benefit from those panels for 7 years before it's going to make a difference. And you go, do I
Mhm.
expect to be here for 7 years? Chances are, right? Probably not.
Mhm.
Especially if you're an older person. Heaven forbid you're putting them in, you're going to really get the benefit of it. You got to be there for 10 years because otherwise, with the
Mhm.
interest and all this, it doesn't pay off. So, going, okay, you're 65 years old. You're going to be 75 years old. Fine. Lots of people live to 75, but you're going to be 75 years old. Are you still going to be wanting to live in this large house that you had when you had your kids? Blah, 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 blah. And suddenly the math changes. And you go, it just doesn't make sense for me. It
Yeah.
doesn't, this doesn't pan out. The numbers don't work. And I think we get attached to things and we want the new thing. And just like we want to keep doing better in life, you go, well, the keeping up with the Joneses, man, got to get that new
Yeah.
house, got to move. Everybody says it's the right time to sell. Everybody says it's the right time to buy. But does it make sense for you?
Yeah.
Is
And
it
I
right
think
for you?
I think that's one of the things that made me stick out. And um it's I knew that I wasn't attached to the outcome.
Okay.
I just wanted to help people get good advice, right? So it's like a lot of people will tell you, oh, it's you can't predict the future. You might as well act now. That is BS advice. Think about, yeah, as I said, it's kind of like, and it's one of the keywords or I guess jargon words like lingo that we use, like retail buyers, residential buyers.
Sure.
This is not retail shopping. This is the complete opposite, right? Yes, we're residential. Yes, we're retail buyers, or retail sellers, but this is not retail. This is not the mall, right? This is you're probably your largest financial transaction of your entire life.
Yeah.
Treat it as such. Have someone that, serves your best interests, not serves your wants. Because it's someone that will look you in the eyes and tell you something you don't want to see is a very honorable person, whether you like them or not. There's a lot of honor in that. So it's like whether that's a real estate agent or whether that's a best friend, a financial advisor, your significant other, someone that will look you dead in your face and tell you what it is and what it's not, despite whatever you feel about it. They also may just be a rude person, but if they're giving you good advice,
Yeah.
that there's a lot of honor in that.
Right.
And so knowing, as we kind of said, like that this is not a retail purchase. This is a financial
Yeah.
transaction with loans, with
It's
margin, right?
serious
This is
business. Yeah.
exact, and we should treat it as such.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming to the end here. I have a couple of questions that I ask everybody, and these can be very general, broad, or specific to your individual niche. What do you feel like is the biggest fallacy that everybody buys into, but it's total BS? What's way overrated?
The biggest fallacy that everyone buys into is that we're victims. And it kind of is in alignment with what we're talking about today and what we kind of mentioned so far. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And whether you understand the reason of why it did or did not happen for you is besides the point. It happened. Now what? What can you learn from this? Who can you help that's currently going through this? Who can you help that may not have to go through this, right? Who could you prevent from going through this so that they don't have to experience some of the things that you experience? And stop asking why me and start asking who can I help? and start realizing that, back to what we said earlier, this radio station that we got playing, we're in full control of the music that we're listening to
Yeah.
on this car ride, right? So it's like, put a station that better serves you. Stop feeding into the BS that we're kind of fed and force fed down our throats and shoved down our throats, and
Yep.
realize that anything you pretty much can visualize could potentially become your reality. It's
Yep.
just, you're usually one or two connections away from, getting to where you want to get to. So we're not victims. That is, I believe, the biggest fallacy. We are capable of more than we can imagine.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now, on the other side of it, what is underrated? What do we need more of?
I believe we need more wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
because we're getting into an age where the information has become so accessible, so easily accessible to everyone, that everyone thinks that they know. And like with wise people, it's like knowing how much you don't know, and knowing what you don't know, and knowing that you don't know everything. And there's a ton of information overload, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of very ignorant, smart people. So it's like, I feel like we need a lot more wisdom.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. John, thank you so much for joining me. Folks, if you want to know more about John, check out the Walk to Wealth podcast and follow him on social media. Links are in the description as always. And until next time, we don't have a problem. We've got an opportunity.